Good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Hovey, pastor of First Baptist Church in Higgins, Texas, and today I want to bring to you the fourth part of our series titled Choices Important. This sermon is titled Important Over Urgent. You know, this is the fourth and the final part in this series, and I do hope that over the last few weeks I've been able to give you some things to think about, or maybe to work on, maybe a little more direction or a little more focus, if you would. Now, one reason why I chose a topic like this is because of my experience within prison ministry for the last 20 or so years, actually over 20 years, but also in my experience within the Kairos prison ministry more specifically, because you see, the title of the first talk of a Kairos weekend, or a presentation, if you would, during that Kairos weekend, the title of that first talk is titled Choices. And it's during that talk that the prisoner is invited to think about the various choices they made in their lives that led them to where they are right now, which, of course, is prison, right? But, you know, we don't want them to stop right there, because now they'll have choices to make while in prison that will, affect their life both in prison and eventually their life on the outside when they gain their release one day. So one of the goals of that talk is to get the prisoner to make determined life choices instead of just reacting to life. When faced with all those many decisions that they have to make each and every day of life, right? Because in almost all situations, we are faced with the choice to either act or to react. One is determined and thought out, while the other is more of just a knee-jerk type reaction. It's kind of instinctive. In one, the prisoner is the one who is in control. In the other, it's the situation he's in that is in control. So anyway, it was thinking about this Kairos Choices talk that got me started on this particular sermon series. Because the truth is that everyone, not just prisoners, but everyone makes choices in life, right? And these choices that we make will determine the course of our lives. We are the sum total of the choices that we make. The prisoner chose to commit a crime or a series of crimes, which eventually led to where they're at now, their incarceration, while let's say the teacher made a choice to go to college and take certain set of classes that led them to the point of them becoming a teacher. The choices that we made in the past have brought us to this point in our lives right now. But you know what? Life is fluid, isn't it? Life is fluid. If I don't like where I'm at right now, there are choices that I can make that will lead me in a different direction or lead me to something else. Now through the years of making choices in your life, have you ever wished that you had more time to do something that was really important to you? Have you ever wished that you had more time to, let's say, take a nap, rest? Almost always, right? Or how about more time to spend with the kids, or to garden, or to study, or to go fishing, or go ride your motorcycle? I bet that everyone in here today has wished for more time to do some of the things that they really wanted to do. But you felt you couldn't do it because you had to mow the lawn, you had to wash the dishes, you had to clean the house, you had bills to pay, you had kids to raise, one thing after another, on and on and on it goes. Things crowd out other things. We all have wished that we had more time to do something, but we just never seem to have enough time. I really think that one of the most common responses to the question that we all ask each other all the time, how you doing? Would be busy. Man, I'm busy. I ain't got time for nothing. I'm so busy. Got no free time at all. Or something along those lines. Now, I don't have any evidence of this, any scientific evidence or proof or anything like that, but I know that I've heard that response a lot of times. The other real typical response is, I'm fine, because that's what people say when they don't want to pursue that line of talk anymore. They just want to get, and go on. But it's not very often that I hear someone say that, oh man, I'm just chilling. Or life is easy, life is a breeze. I got more time than I know what to do with. No, it's usually, I am busy. I'm overloaded. Man, I ain't got time for nothing. I also don't have any proof for this, but I think that, it's possible that if Satan can't make you bad, or if he can't make you hate God, he'll make you busy. He'll make you so busy doing things that in the big picture really don't matter all that much. So we end up then wishing that we had more time to do this or that. But you know what? When we wish that we had more time to spend time doing this or that, we're actually kind of deceiving ourselves, because if you think about it, the truth is you will have time for what you choose to have time for. Let that sink in for a second. We will have time for what we choose to take time for. We'll do what's important to us, So when we say we wish we had more time to do this or that, then what we're really kind of saying is that we wish that we had chosen to spend our time doing this rather than what we chose to do earlier. We wish we had done that other thing instead of what we're doing now. Which leads me to what I want to talk about today, which is our need to choose the important over the urgent. Now, I can almost hear someone say, well, I thought that urgent things were important. Not necessarily. Let me give you an example. Business owner. You're a business owner, or a business owner who's got an angry customer. Now, dealing with that angry customer is urgent, isn't it? It's urgent. But you know what? That business owner creating and implementing some systems that will keep his customers from getting angry, now that's important. Or let's say you've got a car engine that needs to be fixed because you didn't change the oil. Now getting your engine fixed is urgent, right? Of course it is. But you know what? Changing the oil, now that's important. It might keep you from having to get your engine fixed. Let's say, for instance, that you got yourself really, really sick because, you didn't take care of yourself. You don't get enough sleep. You're overwhelmed by so many things to do all the time. You're just doing too much. Well, going to the doctor and getting a shot or getting some medicine or something like that in order to get well. Now that's urgent, isn't it? You need to get yourself well. You want to feel good, not bad. But you know what? Taking care of yourself so that you don't get sick, now that is important. Choose the important over the urgent. And you know what? If you choose what is important, you won't have to deal with as many things that are urgent. The important can greatly reduce or eliminate the urgent. But you know what? The opposite of that is never true. The urgent will not eliminate or reduce the important. The important is always going to be there. If you only deal with the urgent, then you're never dealing with the important. So what do we need to do? We need to choose the important over the urgent. Now remember that video we saw at the beginning of the sermon? Just right at the beginning? We need to choose the golf balls. If if you focus on the pebbles and on the sand, then you're never going to have time. You're going to fill up your jar. You're never going to have time for those golf balls, the more important things in your life. So focus on the golf balls. So I want to take a look at the Gospel of Luke for a minute, if you would. And while I want to read a story about two women, one of them chose what was important, the other chose got caught up in the urgent and was really, distraught and distressed about it. Was really stressed over it. And I'm sure that you know exactly the story that I'm talking about. It's an episode out of the life of two sisters named Martha and Mary. And this is found in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. And it reads like this. Now, as they were traveling along, he entered a certain village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister called Mary, who moreover was listening to the Lord's word, seated at his feet. But Martha was distracted with all of her preparations. And she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Then tell her to help me. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things, but only a few things are necessary. Really only one. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Now the Lord Jesus and his disciples had been traveling through Judah, preaching the gospel, performing miracles, and provoking the Pharisees. When one day they entered the village of Bethany on their way to Jerusalem. And while in Bethany, they stop by and they visit with a family of friends of theirs. Friends named Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. Now, Martha was probably the eldest of the bunch because she is almost always mentioned first in any of the narratives involving them. And so she invited Jesus and the disciples into her home. And now, let me ask you something. I want you to think about this for a second. What do you normally do, or what would you do when company comes over, or you know that company is coming over? What do you do when you know that company is coming over, coming to visit? I can tell you, around our house, we usually go into a cleaning frenzy. Everyone gets drafted in the battle in our war against clutter and dust and dirty floors. We become busy little bees buzzing around the house, cleaning everything in our fight against dirty house. Getting ready for company. And that's just for regular company. That's not like the president is coming over or a head of state or anything like that. This is just regular old folks, friends, coming to visit. Now, if we're like this, and if you can identify with that, now think of this. If we're like this with regular folks, what do you think it would be like in our house if it was the Lord coming over to visit with us, or for dinner, or something like that? Think about that for a minute. We're talking about Jesus, the Son of God, the King of Kings, the great I am. So I can kind of identify. I can understand Martha here in her situation, can't you? Now at verse 40, it tells us that she was distracted with all of her preparations. Now be honest, wouldn't you be also? Wouldn't you be distracted with all the preparations? She was distracted by all the preparations that she felt needed to be made for this visit. In other words, she was consumed with the urgent. And what did she do? She went and snitched on her sister. She became a tattletale. She tattled. Lord, don't you care? Don't you care? I'm doing all this work all by myself while my sister is chilling at your feet. Jesus, tell her to help me out. Now, come on now. I'm busy. I need some help. And it makes me wonder, and I'm including myself in this, it makes me wonder how many of us have been faithfully pursuing the urgent and neglecting the important, just like Martha. And that's one of those big questions that I put in that notes section on the back page of the bulletin. What is the most important thing that you've been distracted from pursuing? What is the most important thing that you've been distracted from pursuing? You know, now some of us might say that we've been distracted from, actually most of us probably, that we've been distracted from spending time with Jesus. That we haven't put Him first in our life, and we haven't spent that daily time in intimate time with Him in His Word and in prayer. Do you want to know when I get most distracted by the urgent? It's when I'm working on my sermon for Sunday. You know, it seems like every time I sit down to start to focus on what I want to say, on writing the sermon, that I'm bombarded with the urgent need to get up and go get another cup of coffee, or maybe the urgent need to let the dogs out because they've been barking and howling and everything, to let outside because someone's walking down the street or something. That's just horrible that they're on their street, you know, so they got to go bark at them. Or maybe that urgent need to get up and go now let them back in the house because now they're scratching and howling outside, wanting to let back in. You know, or there's that urgent need that I have to run to the post office. Or you know what? That bag of chips that's been sitting on top of that refrigerator has been calling out my name for the last 15, 20 minutes, you know. It's becoming pretty urgent for me to get out and get up and go get that bag of chips. Now, some others might say that they've spent so much time doing for their kids that you really haven't had time to invest in them. Or maybe there's the opposite of that. You've come to realize that you have become a child-centered parent. In other words, your whole life revolves around your kids to the point that you've neglected some other very important things in your life, like your marriage. You know, because folks, that bond that we have in marriage, it holds the family together. When that marriage bond is strengthened instead of neglected, that's when that healthy, loving relationship then between you and your spouse, you know, it actually nourishes and it strengthens the kids too. Maybe there's an addiction, or there's a habit, or there's a recurring sin that you need to get help with, you need to deal with, you need to confess, but you've neglected it. And it's really important because it's affecting, you know, many things in your life, but you've neglected it. And why? You've neglected dealing with it. Why? Well, because dealing with it, well, it's hard. Of course it's hard. And it will also take a lot of time. And there are so many other things that are urgent that are demanding your attention. Look at our text again. Martha is upset and distracted, but in verse 41, but the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things. You are so worried and so upset about so many things. You know, it really sounds like our life, doesn't it? We get so worried and upset about and bothered about so many things, so many urgent things that come against us that, you know, many times we can become crippled by it. But what does Jesus say in verse 42? But only a few things are necessary, really only one. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. You know, just like us, Martha had surrendered to the urgent, but Mary had chosen the important. She made a choice, you know what? And we have a choice to make too. And we have to be very intentional in this. Because if we're not intentional in this, I promise you that the urgent will crowd out the important, as you well know, because it happens all the time. We have to be very intentional in this. We have a choice, and we will have time for what we choose to have time for. So what I would like to do now is to give you some practical tools that might help you to focus on the important instead of the urgent, or instead of surrendering to the urgent. And the first tool that I want to tell you about is something that I learned a long time ago in management involving time management. And number one, that is to make an artificial deadline. Make an artificial deadline. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's artificial. It's a fake deadline. It is not real. Let me give you some examples of this. I knew a person who had such a problem with tardiness that they started setting their clocks in their household 15, 20 minutes ahead. And they did that because in their thinking, by setting the clocks 15 to 20 minutes ahead, and then knowing that they had to leave the house by 7:30 every morning, then if they left the house by 7:30, then when they got to work, they got there early. But because of that buffer, that 15 or 20 minute buffer, if they were running late, which they normally were, then hopefully they would get to work at least on time. Now, I know it sounds a little crazy, but they did this for many years. And sometimes, folks, it actually worked. But to my thinking, in my experience, the fact that they knew this buffer was there kind of defeated its purpose. Because like I said, in my experience, I know that if I've got a buffer, if I know a buffer is there, there's a good chance I'm going to use it up every single time. So, now, I don't think they've actually used this method of time management for a long time. But you know what, I can only guess, but I would suppose that their household is probably a little more stress-free because they've stopped using this technique. Because, I mean, can you imagine, think of this, think of what it would be like living in a house where you never knew what time it was. But you know what? Doing something is far better than doing nothing at all. So, if it works for you, then great. In that regard, whatever floats your boat, go ahead and do it. Now, another example I can give you involves something that I am doing right now. Because I know that my sermons technically are due Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. Because around 11 o'clock that's the hour when I start to preach. So my sermon is due by that time, but in my mind, I've set this artificial deadline. My sermon is due by Thursday evening. Thursday evening is my deadline. You see, this because in my thinking, of course, this is an important part of what I do, preaching the gospel. This is a vital part of what I do. So why would I wait till the last minute to think about it, to study for it, to put it together? I need to work on this early so that I know that when that urgent invades my life, which it always does, that when it invades my life, that since I've worked on this early and I'm mostly done with it by now, then I'll have more time to work on the important things that I need to do. Now look at how this works in your own life, setting an artificial deadline. Because I know that at some point, some of you, if not many of you, have needed to take time off from work early, let's say like on a Thursday, because you were going to go on vacation. You need to start on Thursday so you'd be at a certain point for the weekend or something like that. Or maybe you're taking Thursday off, Thursday and Friday, because you want an extended weekend or something. Now, many people, they still have to get all of their work done for the week before they can take any time off. And if you happen to be within that category of people, where you have to get your work for the week done, have you noticed how that, your artificial deadline now of Wednesday, because Thursday is actually your Friday, so your artificial deadline now is Wednesday, getting done by that. Well, actually, Wednesday is your Friday. Yeah, because you're taking off on Thursday. So anyway, how that artificial deadline has made you focus on the important instead of urgent. You're now able to get a week's worth of work done in only 3 days. It's because that artificial deadline has made you focus on the important instead of the urgent. It's made you more efficient. It's made you more effective in your work. You concentrated on what was truly important. Now, something else that you can do that will help you to focus on the important things is to, number 2, you need to be ruthlessly selective in your yeses. Be ruthlessly selective in your yeses. You know, this is something that is so important. Even if you don't set any artificial deadlines, you must be very ruthless, stingy even, with your yeses. Because be careful and prayerful about who and what you say yes to. Because if you don't, you will quickly fill up your time and you will become overcommitted. You'll become way, way, way too busy. A biblical example of this can be seen in Luke's Gospel, again, chapter 9, I believe it is, where Jesus is so focused on arriving in Jerusalem for the Passover that when they go through Samaria, he turns down their request to spend more time with them. And this, of course, then it upsets the Samaritans to the point that they don't offer him any more assistance in their journey. Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 53. And it came about when the days were approaching for his ascension, that he resolutely set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers on ahead of him, and they went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make arrangements for him. And they did not receive him, because he was journeying with his face toward Jerusalem. You see, Jesus was selective with his yeses. He resisted their desire for him to any desire that they may have had for him to stay longer with them, because he had to remain focused on what was important. And he needed to stay focused on getting to Jerusalem for the Passover. And you need to understand this, folks. Being busy, busyness does not necessarily mean productivity. More times than not, it'll actually mean just the opposite. I can remember when I was managing housekeeping departments within the universities, I spent a lot of time trying to get this idea over to my employees, to let them understand that though it is great that they are hard workers, working hard is great, but working smart is far, far better. Working hard is great, but working smart is best. So instead of continually adding then to your to-do list, continually adding to it, maybe you need to come up with a to-don't list. Learn to say no to good opportunities and reserve your yeses for the best opportunities. Now, I know a guy that would give you the shirt off of his back. He's a great guy. I consider him a friend. And if you would ask him for anything, he would bend over backwards to do it for you. And this isn't for me. This is for just anybody who would ask him to help out in this or that or the other thing. He's gotten better at it, but he had a hard time at saying no. And because of that, he almost always looked like he had been rode hard and put up wet. Now, do you know what happens when people find out that you'll never say no? You will never have a free moment in your life again. You'll always be doing something for someone else and hardly ever anything for yourself or for your family. And as important as it is for us to help other people, it is vitally important to understand that in order to continue helping other people, we have to maintain our own health and our own physical strength and our own household by learning to say no to the urgent, so that we can focus on what is important. Because, folks, the best people, they don't do more. They do more of what is important. The best moms, they don't do more. They do more of what is important. The best teachers don't do more. They invest their time and their energies in doing more of what is important. You know, the most effective followers of Jesus, they don't do more and more and more and more and more. They do more of what matters most, and that is that which glorifies God. And you can do more of what matters most by setting artificial deadlines, by being ruthlessly selective with your yeses, but also by doing what matters most first. Number 3, doing what matters most first. Kind of a no-brainer there. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? If you want to do more of what matters most, then do it first. Duh. You know, no more of this, well, if I have time, or when everything slows down, I'll be able to. No, focus on what is important first. Not second, not third, first. Remember the video that we showed earlier? Focus on the golf balls. Focus on those golf balls. That's what's important. You know, but let's look at the story of Martha and Mary again. If we're going to give this the simplest interpretation of what Jesus is saying to Martha, then what matters most, or what is most important, is spending time with Him. Verse 42 again. But only a few things are necessary, really only one. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Now, the word only isn't in the original manuscript. It was added for, later for clarification. But the truth is that there are important things that we need to do in life. Whether it be in our home or in our business or work life or our spiritual life, Jesus said there are things that are necessary. A few things are necessary. There are important things that we should do or bring to the top of our to-do list because they're important. But of all of those important things that we need to do, Jesus said there is one thing that takes priority over them all. Only one thing that takes priority over everything. And what was that? It was what Mary had chosen, right? And Jesus said that what she had chosen shall not be taken away from her. So what did she choose? She chose Jesus, didn't she? She chose Jesus. She turned away from all of those urgent things in life that Martha had become consumed with, preoccupied with, and she chose what was important over the urgent. She chose Jesus. And if you're here today, or if you're within the sound of my voice, and you have chosen Jesus already, then you can continue choosing Him day after day after day, choosing Him first by seeking Him first early in the morning. Don't let your day start without going to Him, spending time with Him. So how do you do that? You start waking up a few minutes earlier, like a half hour to 45 minutes before you normally would. And spend time with Him like Mary did, in the Word of God and in prayer. And get this mentality in your head that if I'm going to choose what's important every day, then I need to seek the one who is most important first. Let me repeat that. If I'm going to choose what's most important every day, then every day I need to seek the one who is most important first. After all, Jesus did say in Matthew 6:33, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. But you know what? If you haven't chosen Jesus first, if you haven't sought Him first, then there's an old saying that there is no time like the present. You, with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your being, you need to choose Jesus now. This is an opportunity that is presented to you right now. Choose this day who you will serve. Choose Jesus. Spend time with Him.